Commissioner Pinocchi's here.
Good morning. This meeting is called to order. For the record, the time is 1:30 p.m. The date is May 20th, 2025. The Commission and its staff are appearing from Helena, Montana, in the Bollinger Room of the Montana Public Service Commission. I am Brad Molnar, the presiding chairman for this meeting. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. For the record, the following commissioners are present. We have Commissioner Wellborn and we have Commissioner Lukacek. We also have online Commissioner Pinocchi and Commissioner Fielder. Therefore, we have all 5 commissioners, so we have a quorum. The Public Service Commission welcomes any comment on any item that is on today's agenda or any matter that is within the jurisdiction of the Montana Public Service Commission. Are there any public commenters in the room? Seeing none. Are there any public commenters online? There are none. There is a change to today's agenda, work session number 2, docket 2024.05.053. Northwestern's application to increase electric and natural gas service rates has been withdrawn. So we'll just do item 1 today. I'll move for the minutes. Okay. Is there approval for the minutes? I make a motion for approval of the minutes. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none. All in favor of adoption of the minutes signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, 5-0. The motion, the first, the one and only, docket 2016.4.66/D 2017.8.65, Northwestern Corporation, DBA, Northwestern Energy, Northwestern, and Montana Environmental Information Center, MEIC, Northwestern and MEIC's joint motion for declaratory ruling to consider Northwestern and MEIC's joint motion. Would staff please like to present?
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon, commissioners. On October 23rd of last year, 2024, Northwestern Energy and the Montana Environmental Information Center, known as MEIC, jointly moved for a declaratory ruling addressing 2 questions associated with the recent Montana Supreme Court decision and the now repealed Montana Renewable Power Production and Rural Economic Development Act, which, for the sake of brevity, I'll be calling just the Act. The first question that the parties posed to the Commission is, does the Act's now repealed penalty provision control the Commission's assessment of a penalty in this case? And second, if the Act's penalty provision applies, is the Commission strictly limited to using information from or before the penalty year? Or can information available after the compliance year be used to calculate an appropriate penalty? Now, this is phrased in the form of a petition for declaratory ruling, which is a bit unique for the Commission. We don't see too many of these, but it is a specific process outlined in MAPA and in Montana Administrative Rule. That process allows any party to seek a declaratory ruling from the Commission when doubt exists as to a statute and how it affects the party's legal rights. So the Commission, in response, may either deny the petition for declaratory ruling, which has the effect of saying nothing about the legal rights of the parties, or it can approve the request for a declaratory ruling and answer the questions posed by the parties. In this case, staff recommends that the Commission approve the request for a declaratory ruling and answer the questions posed to the Commission as follows. First, that the Act's penalty provision does control the Commission's assessment of penalties in this case. And second, that information available as of March 31 of each year following a compliance year may be used to calculate the penalties. Now, this is a very old docket that predates everyone's involvement with the Commission, save a select few, some of whom may be in the room right now. So for the sake of the Commission's information, I'll review briefly the history and the procedural background of this case before moving into the details of staff's recommendation. So first, the Act at issue here was adopted in 2005. It required public utilities to purchase a certain amount of electricity from community renewable energy projects, or CREPs, and that amount of energy had to be purchased in each year. So the Act also allowed the Commission to grant waivers of the CREP purchase requirement under certain circumstances. Under the Act, if a utility failed to either meet its CREP purchase obligation or obtain a waiver from the Commission, it would be subject to administrative penalties. The present case began when Northwestern petitioned for waivers for the compliance years 2015 and 2016. And for the sake of this Act, compliance year is just a calendar year, so January through December. The Commission consolidated both of those petitions into a single docket, which is the docket before you today. MEIC participated in the case as an intervener and opposed Northwestern's petitions. On September 24th, 2018, the Commission issued Order 7578B, which waived Northwestern's purchase obligations for the compliance years 2015 and 2016. MEIC appealed the Commission's decision, and on appeal, the District Court reversed the waivers the Commission had granted for those 2 years. Northwestern and the Commission then appealed that decision up to the Montana Supreme Court. While the appeal was pending in front of the Montana Supreme Court, the 2021 Montana legislature met and enacted House Bill 576, which repealed the Act in its entirety effective May 14th of 2021. HB 576 contained both a savings clause and a retroactivity clause. The retroactivity clause applied the repeal of the Act to any application pending or commenced before the Commission prior to the effective date of the bill, which again was May 14th of 2021. The savings clause, meanwhile, preserved the rights and duties that had matured, penalties that were incurred, or proceedings that were begun before May 14th of 2021. After House Bill 576 was enacted, the Montana Supreme Court remanded the pending appeal without issuing a decision on the merits to the District Court to determine the effect of the retroactivity clause and that saving clause. The District Court, on remand, concluded that House Bill 576 did not moot the case because the savings clause rather than the retroactivity clause applied to this proceeding. The District Court also determined that Northwestern was obligated to pay an administrative penalty for the years 2015 and 2016 and went so far as to assess that penalty against Northwestern. So once again, both the Commission and Northwestern appealed to the Montana Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ultimately decided that Northwestern should be penalized for its noncompliance in the year 2015. It may be subject to penalty for the year 2016, but any penalties would need to be imposed by the Commission rather than the District Court. So the case was remanded to the Commission for 3 purposes. 1 was to assess a penalty for the compliance year 2015. 2 was to determine whether or not a penalty should be appropriate for the 2016 compliance year. And if necessary, number 3, the Commission should assess a penalty for 2016. MEIC and Northwestern have attempted to negotiate a settlement in this case. However, they reached an impasse over the 2 questions that are now posed to the Commission in this petition for declaratory ruling. So with that history behind us, I'll move into some of the details of the staff recommendation. Regarding the first question, which again was, does the repealed penalty provision still control the Commission's assessment of a penalty in this case? MEIC argues that the savings clause applies to protect the case from the repeal of the Act. That argument relies on language from the Montana Supreme Court's decision on appeal. Northwestern, on the other hand, argues that the savings clause did not preserve the Act's penalty provisions because the Commission's duty to impose the penalty did not arise until the Montana Supreme Court issued its decision. Now, based on the language of the Supreme Court's decision, staff recommends that the Commission conclude the Act's penalty provision governs this case still. The reasons for that conclusion are detailed in paragraphs 21 through 23 of the draft order that is included in your meeting materials, but in brief, The first reason is that when the court refers in its decision to the penalty, it must have been referring to the Act's penalty provision, which indicates, from the Supreme Court's language, that the penalty provision should still govern this case. Second, when the court held the savings clause applies to this case, it did so without exceptions. Since this case always concerned a waiver of the penalty provisions of the Act, it would be illogical, to conclude that the penalty provisions were not saved as part of this case. Finally, the duty or obligation at issue here is not the Commission's duty to impose a penalty, as Northwestern argues. Rather, the relevant duties and obligations were Northwestern's obligations to buy electricity from CREPS or pay a penalty if it didn't. The Montana Supreme Court has already concluded that the ability to impose a penalty already existed before the Act was repealed, so before the retroactivity clause took effect. As a result, the now repealed penalty provision must still govern the Commission in this case, and that is staff's recommendation. Regarding the second question about the scope of the information the Commission can use to calculate a penalty, MEIC argued that the Commission should be limited to only the information that existed on or before December 31 of each compliance year, so December 31 of 2015 and December 31 of 2016. Northwestern argues that the penalty provision contains no clear limitation on what information the Commission can consider. And as a result, the Commission can use any information, even if that information wasn't available when this case was last before the Commission. To answer this question, staff notes that the Commission has required, through its administrative rules that are now repealed as well as the Act, but it did formally require Northwestern to submit compliance filings no later than March 31 of each year following a compliance year. Those filings would indicate Northwestern's CREP shortfalls for the year as calculated by Northwestern. The filings served as a report to the Commission about Northwestern's compliance with its CREP obligation. Consequently, staff recommends that the Commission use information that existed as of March 31 of each year following a compliance year to calculate the penalties in this case. Now, staff's recommendations on both of those questions are detailed more exhaustively in the draft order that was included in your meeting materials. To reiterate, staff recommends granting the joint petition for a declaratory ruling and answering the two questions with the draft order. Staff also recommends granting staff authority to make non-substantive edits as may be necessary to finish this final order. And finally, it's worth noting that if the Commission approves the draft order, staff will have to submit that order for publication in the Montana Administrative Register. That is one of the unique characteristics of a petition for declaratory ruling. So with that said, I'm joined today by Haley from our Regulatory Division and Laura also from our Legal Division. And the three of us would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions from the commissioners in the Bowling room? Are there any questions from commissioners online? Hearing none. I'm going to make a motion. I make a motion that, and this is found from page 12 in your book, the last page of item 1, that we rule that the Montana Code annotated 69.3204 sub 10 2019 controls the Commission assessment of penalties in this case. And in this case, only information from or before March 31st of the year following the CREP compliance year may be used to calculate penalties under Montana Code 69.3204 sub 10. Is there a second? A motion and a second. Is there discussion?
Mr. President,
Yes.
thank you. So I just want to be clear on the motion. So your motion is to issue a declaratory ruling answering the questions posed by the two parties in this case and adopt the draft declaratory ruling as the final ruling.
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I made the motion, and normally he who makes the motion speaks first. I have been following this since it was before the legislature in 2005. And it's been in and out and up and down. I hope that this puts it to bed. So with that in mind, I have read everything you have in here, and it was like a trip down memory lane. You had every issue exactly on point and in time. So I was proud to be able to make the motion. Is there any further discussion? Online, is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Yes.
thank you. I just appreciate how long this has been working its way through our proceedings and court proceedings, and there's a lot of different timelines here. I appreciate how I think everything's laid out clearly, and I think um, the draft ruling is very logical. So I will support your motion. Thank you.
Okay, so 20 years after the fact, all those in favor of my motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Panochi, did you vote? Those opposed, same sign. Is Commissioner Panochi online? Is he muted? Okay. Commissioner Panochi? Commissioner Panochi? Motion passes 4-0. Date of the next business meeting is May 27th, 2025. Currently scheduled for 1:30 in the afternoon. Seeing no further business to come before the commission, for the record, the time is 1:47 p.m. and the date is May 20th, 2025. This meeting is adjourned.